Hi, my name is. How and if Alabama should or could use this technology for the benefit of Alabama? Is that a fair statement? All right. Anybody have a problem with that? Somebody copied that down, I hope. We got that? Okay.
But I would I mean that in the public sector. Like,
I'll follow you,
for
certainly.
public good, I think we focus too
Well, that's what that's our,
private and financial.
we're gonna leave it to the
statement.
private folks to figure out how they're gonna use it. We need to find out if Alabama can or will. Now, before we go any further, let's make sure I know who's here, all right? And that everybody knows who everybody else is. Most of y'all probably know, but I'm just a part-time legislator just trying to figure things out. Daniel Urquhart, are you here? Oh, behind me. All right. The governor appointed you. Congratulations. Representative Anthony Daniels. He is not here. Representative Mike Shaw. Ta-da.
That's me.
Okay. Myself, Senator Bobby Singleton. He is not here.
Here.
Oh, there we are. Is that you, Senator Singleton?
That's me.
A voice from above.
You look great today.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Clay Helms, Secretary of State. There you are, Clay. Sean Sibley, Attorney General.
Yes, sir. Right behind you. Here.
Oh, yes. State Treasurer, Glinda Allred. Oh, okay, thank you. Miss Amanda, you're here. Okay, Securities. Department of Finance, Taylor Nichols. There you are. Yeah, I knew you. Chad Mason, Public PSC. Thank you. Andre Scott, State Banking Department.
Here.
Ah, good to have you. Bankers Association, Scott Latham.
Yes, sir.
Two people from the banks. Okay. Blockchain Alliance, Wade Preston. Alabama Energy Institute, Blake Hardwick. There you are. Alabama State Bar, Chris Coley. Okay. Alabama Association for Justice, Gavin King. Oh, okay, good. BCA, Helena Duncan. Oh, yes. I'm great. How are you doing? Let's see. National Federation of Independent Business, Rosemary Elabash. You're here. Administrator, Credit Union Association, Greg McClellan. Credit Union? Okay, thank you. I think that's it. Is anybody here that I did not call?
Mr. Chairman, we have the association, Credit Union Association represented as well.
Okay.
Seems to be a conflation of terms. We think there was a crossover of, both were intended. We're both ACUA, Alabama Credit Union Association, Alabama Credit Union Administration.
We welcome you. This is not necessarily a closed meeting anyway, all right? So if we need to add that or something, we'll deal with that administratively as we get through, okay? All right. So we have now taken roll. We know who's here. We have chairman and vice chairman. We have at least two designated items that we have set as particular goals that are here. Now, the question I think we ought to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what discussion should we have today? Where's Bitcoin today on the market? Anybody know? Okay. Any further discussion? Look, if we're going to get something done, and we have until February to do something on this, we've got to start talking. We've got to figure out where and what we're going to do. So let me throw this out. Does this industry require protection of the public from its trading and such? Is that a fair question to begin with?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think we can give two sort of
Please.
For us to set the stage. So can y'all hear me? Okay. I'm sure Representative Shaw has some thoughts on this subject as well. We've discussed it at length during the session. So I serve as director of the Securities Commission. We're responsible for enforcing the securities laws and the money transmission laws. And so many of these companies that are popping up around cryptocurrency, and it's not the cryptocurrency itself, the transactions peer-to-peer, but the companies that are forming around cryptocurrency that are allowing consumers and investors to apply their assets to certain trades or trading functions, deposit their assets, make loans with these digital assets, receive interest, are not complying with laws that are required of financial institutions in this state. So many of them are performing functions identical to that of banks and credit unions, depository institutions, securities brokerage firms, and investment advisory services. And these financial institutions in the state are required to comply with a litany of compliance procedures to include cybersecurity procedures and protocols to prevent consumers and investors' funds from being stolen to the best of their ability. They're required to comply with anti-money laundering laws, along with minimal capital requirements and a host of other federal and state laws. And so the problem that we're having here at the commission is that, these firms are having to pay the cost of doing business. Some of the crypto firms are charging fees that would never be allowed by any of our regulated financial entities. And so it's just not fair. It's not fair for these organizations to pop up and operate like financial institutions to the detriment of our legitimate licensed financial industry. On the consumer investor side, there's a whole other host of issues that involve fraud. Our office has been investigating and prosecuting these cases for about 10 years on cryptocurrency. And so what we're able to see, and in the interest of time, I'll keep it brief, is cryptocurrency being deposited, used to fund terrorist activities. Much of it's sent over to China, Russia, Southeast Asia. We can prove that companies are popping up and they're being operated by fraudsters. And so our investing public here in Alabama, who's the first person they call? They call law enforcement. They call the Securities Commission, help us. We put this investment online. We believed it was a legitimate company. They had on their website that they were licensed, whatever that is. Of course they weren't. And so their money's being lost to fraud. There's several other issues to address as well, but the blockchain technology is not synonymous with cryptocurrency. And so there are certainly uses for blockchain, and just based on the experience that we've had at the commission studying it, permissive use cases like Wade mentioned down there. It's been our experience on the financial side, though, that blockchain technology is not in a position to displace the electronic payment system that we have now with our financial institutions. It's too slow, processing times are too slow, et cetera. And while all the information is public, it's not necessarily usable or readable. For example, if you have a wallet that contains cryptocurrency, and these are just in fraud cases, I know there are legitimate, transactions going on between friends or whatever, but you can see the money going from the wallet to 10 other wallets and then to 20 other wallets and then hundreds of other wallets. And so you don't know the identity because there's no know your customer requirements that are required of the financial institutions, banks, credit unions, securities firms. And so we're not able to actually trace a lot of these digital asset transactions completely through. So on the technology side, blockchain, I know there are smaller firms that may use it as a record-keeping function. I think that would be something we should certainly look at if it could streamline government operations. I know there are systems and each agency is responsible for administering them. Alabama Buys is a great program. I don't know whether blockchain technology could keep up with the vendors any cleaner than Alabama Buys, but there are certainly systems that I think we should look at and also determine whether there's not already an existing regulatory framework for some of these companies that are popping up around crypto. Our office has licensed several of the crypto companies as money transmitters, and so they have been in our office. We've worked with them. We're happy to work with anybody. Will share information about some of the companies that we have and how they were able to get licensed. But it's our position that if these companies are operating like financial institutions, they do need to be licensed, and so we need to keep that in mind as we move forward, but there's certainly a regulatory framework, for everything that's workable, and we're not discouraging, the crypto industry in our state, or we're not pushing out any businesses as a result of that. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm here to provide whatever information our organization can, and use us as a resource.
Thank
when
you.
needed.
Appreciate it. Representative Shaw, you've dealt with this before, and you dropped bills on this, I think, dealing with this. Could you explain your position on this?
Sure. I think, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also a part-time legislator, and my day job is technology and financial services. I work for a federal insured credit union. That's my day job. So I do, Ms. Sen's concerns in that regard mean a lot to me. For me, I think your first question is very good. Like, paraphrasing, what should our involvement be, and how should we regulate this? To me, there's a line. If dollars are involved, always. Dollars are our traditional currency. It's what's backed by the U.S. government. Anytime a dollar is involved, traditional regulation should apply. Where I get concerned is when you start getting into pure blockchain. A lot of the fraud that's happening has nothing to do with blockchain. People are just taking the money, they don't do anything with it, and they say, hey, you're investing in crypto, and there's nothing happening behind the scenes. So a lot of it could be having to do with just educating people on how it works and how to know you're really involved in crypto. But to me, it's dollars. We know how to regulate dollars. It's the crypto-only world. To what degree do we push into that crypto only? So if you're only dealing in these, whether it be Bitcoin or something else, how do we regulate that without over-regulating it? Because you can take your marbles and go home in the cryptocurrency world. You can go to, right now, I could go to Venezuela. I can go to, well, not so much Venezuela, but you can go to Russia and China or whatever, and online
Be careful
and do business there. And if we over-regulate, it's very important to one degree that we work with crypto companies and make sure that this is a friendly environment for crypto companies, because we want them to stay here. There's opportunities for our state. There's sort of traditional opportunities with just employment and how that works, but also just there's advantages to us to be on the forefront of bringing these companies in a positive way. So that's first thing, is this danger of over-regulating and pushing it to other countries that aren't as friendly. But I think that's the big question is where do we draw the line between regular dollars that we know about, that we've dealt with for decades, and the crypto-only functions, which really have a couple characteristics. One is they are self-regulated. People who say that Bitcoin isn't regulated, that's not true. It is heavily regulated by math in the protocol and the consensus of the people using it. The difference is it's not backed. It's not backed by the U.S. government. So there's a lot of directions that you go. So I think your first question, I don't know if there's anything we can add to that. I think that's the questions will generate themselves as we get into it. But to me, that's I want the state to be very friendly to blockchain companies, but I also want to make sure our people are protected too. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, where do we draw the line between traditional currencies and crypto? I think that's where, and a lot of that's going to involve educating ourselves, educating the public on how blockchain works. I mined crypto back 12, 13 years ago. Not enough, because I still go to work every day. But so I'm very familiar with it. I take it for granted that I've just lived with it, so I know how it works. But I think a lot of it is in educating ourselves on how it works, because I think a lot more will make sense when we do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just add to that just briefly. It is the dollar that we're concerned about, but most people don't mine. There are certainly mining operations that are popping up across the United States. Several of them are owned by the Chinese, who have outlawed cryptocurrency. But the only way for most people to get in is the dollar. So it's a dollar in, and the only value that it has is the dollar out. So there's no intrinsic value, but it is the dollar that's getting people in.
There's intrinsic value to cryptocurrency. The intrinsic value of cryptocurrency is security, because as Representative Shaw said, it's the consensus of the entire network. And that consensus is the security. The cryptography that backs that and the checks and balances that happen between that whole network creates a security. As you talked about mining, that's what mining is. It's your reward for validating transactions and saying, yes, this is a legitimate transaction. So you get a small reward for participating in the network as a good actor and saying, yes, this is a good transaction. In proof-of-stake networks, it's the same way. It's just a stake rather than an energy-intensive mining operation. So when we begin at a place where we say cryptocurrency has no intrinsic value, we've got to stop there and say, no, Security is value. I mean, we saw what happened with just CrowdStrike just the other day. One centralized actor, which held the security of several different computer systems, they had a foul up. It wasn't even a security breach. Just somebody goofed a line of code and everything went haywire for a weekend, right? Like people were stuck at airports for 14 hours because, one guy at CrowdStrike goofed some code. And that's what happens in a centralized security apparatus. If we have a decentralized security apparatus, which is what cryptocurrency is, that's the value, is we don't have that single point of failure. And that is where the financialization, and that's where people are actually able to put a value on that in US dollar terms. So
Interesting.
I just want to say that we've got to stop it. There's no intrinsic value. Yes, there are silly meme coins and things like that out there, but when we're talking about actual blockchain networks that hold a basis of value for an entire ecosystem, yes, the value is security. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Just a moment. Ms. Hardwick, what role does the Energy Institute have in this? Stand up and speak out.
Concerned when the legislation was first introduced last year about what it would mean for our members, and our members include producers and distributors for our electric grid as well as customer impact. So, for example, our electric municipality, we've had a couple of occurrences where a cryptocurrency company sets up something similar to a database and overnight shuts it down and leaves after a city has invested a lot of money to build out a platform for these people to use the electricity provided. It's a heavy energy intensive industry.
All right. Thank you.
I would be interested in what other states have done, either for using it for the public sector and certainly for the protection of the private sector.
I'll tell you, the good question, and I can briefly respond to that, which is Arkansas passed a law a couple of years ago, and recently they revoked it, okay? And Louisiana, even more recently, passed a law, and that's been it. And which is one of the reasons we decided to begin this process, because we don't want to make the errors that's been made, nor do we want to get too far out. We want to do this. We want to know, kind of have an idea of what we're doing before we make the decision. But you're right. I think we need to look at and maybe go to NCSL and to maybe ALEC and some of the others that might have some information that would be appropriate. Certainly.
Other thing that would be of real interest is the fraud part to Amanda's agency, because you've got small business owners who are constantly being bombarded or borrow money from this, borrow money from that, and if they don't have a local bank that they deal with on a regular basis, then they're likely to be the fraud, that they are affected by fraud. So any legislation that we could pass that would make the punishment for these people greater, I think would be a real benefit, not only just for businesses, but for individuals.
Mike, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just want to sort of educate you. I'm with banks, and we regulate all the state chartered banks in the state. And I want to give you a little history on why banks are so concerned with banks today spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. You know, banks today are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars because regulators like me, they go into the bank and say, you know, do you know your customer? Tell me about your customer. Did you check their credit? Did Did you make sure they're a viable company? Did you, you just can't imagine all the questions we ask those banks. And you have to stop sometimes and say, why do we do that? And back in the 70s and early 80s, Congress recognized that especially in Miami and California and Texas and New Mexico and Louisiana, most of the cartels were just funneling their money through banks, and there was no way to track it. You know, they'd put millions of dollars through an account and send it straight to Mexico, and the government had no way of really tracking any of that. And so they passed a bill that said, you know, from now on, you got to know what your customer is, and if anybody makes a deposit over $10,000 in cash, you got to write a report and send it to the IRS, and then it that rocked along for many, many years. And then after the 9/11 incident that happened in the United States, all of a sudden we realized that a lot of the money that had been going to the terrorist had been coming from the United States and going, you know, through checks and other things. You didn't have to be cash. It could be anything that they were putting in a bank and wiring it to somebody else, who write it to somebody else, who finally got it to the terrorist organizations. And so Congress, again, took immediate action and said, okay, banks, you aren't doing enough. You've got to know your customer. And from that time on, one of the first things we do when we go in for an examination is we want to find out how, when they open an account, what information are you getting? Is it enough? Is this guy in the chicken business or is he in the dope business? You know, so that's why we're a little concerned if we have an industry operating that somebody has money that they don't want the government to know they have, and I know a lot of people have that. They always know how much I've got, I think, but you know, money flows through, and with the system that's out there right now, there's no way to track it, to see, as Amanda said, it goes here, and then they blockchain, and through the blockchain series, it goes to 5 other accounts, it sends it to 20 other accounts, it sends it to 50 other accounts, and then it starts going back down, and unless you're involved in that industry, you don't know where it's going or who's giving it. And so it's just if this committee decides that we want to do something, we need to make sure that we don't overregulate. I totally agree with you, but we do have to have some regulations if we're going to allow that in the state of Alabama, and it also protects the consumer that's in the small business and the large business that are out there trying to work in that field. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, can I just make a point since we have the bankers
Certainly.
here? In 2016, our legislature passed, in partnership with our financial industry, a reporting law. We have 2. One that says securities industry, we want you guys, you're mandated reporters now on financial exploitation, abuse of seniors. In 2020 or 2021, the banking industry said, you know what, we want all the banks to report as well. And so we get, at the Securities Commission, I mean, the first year in 2016, we had 30 reports. This year, first 6 months of the year, 260 reports just from financial institutions. And what they're doing is notifying us that, hey, this senior is probably losing money to fraud, and we're able to intervene. The banks are able to hold the disbursement, delay it, or refuse the transaction if it's clearly a fraud. And so we're preventing millions of dollars from leaving the accounts of our seniors. In cryptocurrency, when there is no intermediary, there's nothing we can do about it. They're not mandatory reporters because there's nobody to report. There's no management team. There's nobody to hold accountable when frauds happen. And I can't tell you the number of reports that we've had. I'd have to go back and review, but we do have those numbers of seniors that are losing money through crypto frauds and cryptocurrency. And so, you know, that's just something else to keep in mind.
These cases that you're talking about, seniors losing money through crypto fraud, are they seniors who are being solicited to invest in a cryptocurrency scam, and they're giving money to someone who is then absconding with the money? Is that the type of fraud that we were talking about?
That's one type, or we've had seniors being directed to Bitcoin ATMs. We've got several of those cases. Some of them, come up from a romance scheme type situation. Some of them are being directed to deposit money into a wallet, a fraudster's wallet. But the point is that if they had gone into a bank or conducted an electronic transaction through their phone or website, the banks will flag it.
If I could, though, this seems a little bit, in some ways, and sorry if this is a blunt analogy, but this seems a little bit like, well, we shouldn't allow people, especially seniors, to use the internet because there are these Nigerian Prince email scams out there. Instead, we need to make sure that they use the Postal Service because that's tried and true, and we have good regulation set up for that. And we don't want people getting scammed in this way. And it's not so much that it's the internet that's causing the scam, it's that it's human beings being human beings and trying to opportunistically take advantage of others. So I think that we have to kind of balance these things of like, fraud is going to happen, right? Do we want to squash or not? You're not going to squash it. I mean, it's going to happen. Like, do you want to try to curtail and hold back something as powerful as, say, the internet because there's Nigerian Prince email scams out there? Or do we want to, make a push towards educating the public that, like, hey, here's a new attack vector. Here's how this is a different space where people are going to try to defraud you because no one understands it too well. I mean, I remember, I'm just old enough to remember late 90s. Oh, you couldn't get anybody to put the credit card information in online, right? Like, because we were scared, right? It's going to get stolen, right? And now we just do it.
I still don't.
All the time.
Because the credit card companies are responsible for the fraud now. So there's somebody out there in these transactions.
But people are paying for that still. I mean, you say the credit card companies, but like, how do they have the money? Because I'm paying extra because my small business pays 3.5% every time somebody swipes a card because they've got to cover for all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just the perspective I want to put out there is that, like, fraud, I don't want to minimize fraud. I don't want to say, oh, we should just, to heck with it, let's figure it out as it goes. But we do need to keep it in the perspective of the balance of, hey, technology is happening. It's coming. It is changing lots of things for the better. But yet also with it are going to become novel new ways for people to defraud others because that's what human beings do. When they come across a novel new technology, they're going to figure out how to use it for both good and bad.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this kind of gets to what I was talking about earlier. There's a lot of stuff we understand about our traditional banking system. I mean, we thoroughly understand it. The regulation we've written is almost defines it now. And we had a member who lost $300,000 the old-fashioned way. They transferred it out because they thought it was going to something, and then, a couple months later they said. So the traditional, our old school banking system, it can be used for fraud. About 23 years ago, millions of teenagers opted out of the recording industry. They said, we're tired of doing it this way. And they started downloading MP3s and everybody freaked out. They said, they can't do this. And they did, and changed the whole world as far as how that works. We're I feel like we're in the early stages of that here. I mean, we can regulate LPs and records all day long, and we're good at that. But a lot of it has to do with just understanding. I think there's a lot of education, a lot of understanding that has to happen. If we tried to regulate MP3s the way we regulate, records, and I mean records, the ones that my kids don't even know what they are. Well, they do because we have some, but or cassette tapes or something, then we're going to get ourselves in trouble, and we're going to chase people into other systems. Just like the kids went to MP3, they can go to a different financial system. Right now, there is a lot of value in moving dollars back and forth, but as more and more people adopt it, and more countries adopt crypto, that value will be intrinsic to crypto. So I think so much depends on how much we can educate ourselves on and the people around us and the people of the state on how it works, what it means, just even at a high level. And so we just got to be careful about writing laws before we understand that, I think.
I think you're correct. Now, I would also make a comment here. I don't think that looking out through this crowd. I don't think we have anybody here with pitchforks and clubs ready to beat the vampire. Um, this body is here to get more understanding and also so that we can understand and take care of those issues. Yes, fraud will occur. At least in the system that we have, we know how to deal with it. In the system that's developing, we don't know how to deal with that. Centralized makes it a means that is quicker to find and deal with and respond to. Diversified complicates it more. How far complicated, we don't know. The other aspect, like with the cloud and the other matters of data storage, who owns it? When does the ownership transfer? What's the protections that's there? I think all those things are still developing, and right now the feeling is, and maybe this is my pitchfork, is the aspect that the IT owns it and is in control of it. How do I protect myself, not against my fellow human beings, but against my IT folks? How is that protected? How is that challenged? How is that controlled? And I think those are the issues that we're dealing with. It's not a matter of trying to beat something down. It's a matter of trying to find a path and a way that we can assure all hands, everybody, that what's being done is proper, that is has recourse, a valid recourse, without overpowering cost and difficulty and speed. Um, in one instance, I made a trip, conducted business, came home, and then I see two credit card charges that were done in Michigan and one in California. I had been to Florida, and the information was taken, stolen, and reused. That was caught very rapidly. I was notified by the agency that occurred. If it had been simply IT, self-regulated, I'm not sure that I would have known that until I was broke, which would not have taken long. So I think those issues and concerns are real, and we can't just lay it upon an IT, and you say self-regulated. Who is the selves and what the regulations are? I think the state has an interest in understanding and knowing what that is and who that is. So anyway, those are my thoughts along that line.
Senator, may I speak for just a second? I am a 33-year-old recovering banker, and I have seen just about all of it. Worked at a $22 billion company. I worked for a small community bank, and I know in 2008 when the banking industry kind of bust wide open, there was a lot of regulations put in place that forced a lot of small banks to close because of the parameters that were put in place to try to prevent what happened in 2008, an overreaction. And so a lot of banks went out of line, and I've been a regional president. I started as a teller. I've seen it all. And so, but what I would tell my staff and what I would ask you guys to keep in your mind, regulations is not a bad word. It's something that help minimize the risk. It's never going to get away. Anytime you're dealing with money and other people's identity, it's not a riskless-based business. So I think our goal here is we don't understand everything. It is the way of the future. So in my mind, what we need to just figure out to do is how do we minimize the exposure to our consumers and to businesses across our state, which comes in the form of some sense of regulation, but not over-regulation to where we do make it very difficult to do the work. But clearly, we don't understand the direction of all of this stuff, but we need to get there. But it has to have some sense of regulation around it just to minimize the risk associated to it.
Yeah, I think that the theme I keep hearing is like, we need to understand more, we need to learn more, which I 1,000% agree, because I'm sitting here as someone who knows this space very, very well, and it's difficult for me because it's like if it's 1995 and I've been coding in HTML for 6 years and someone just walks up to me and is like, "Hey, tell me about the internet. What do you think that's going to do?" And you'd sound like a crazy person. You'd be like, "Oh, everything's going to be on the internet. You're going to buy plane tickets on the internet. You're going to register your car on the internet. You're going to, all this stuff." It's so many applications to what we're doing here, and there is like so much kind of misunderstanding and need to understanding. I mean, to the point about like the other states, and there's also successes out there. Like Wyoming's done incredible work in the blockchain space. Our neighbors in Tennessee have done great work. Many of the bills we're talking about are their energy bills, and they're kind of some of them are kind of getting ramrodded through by special interests, and that's for one particular cryptocurrency. Like there's literally only one large cap cryptocurrency that is energy intensive, and that's Bitcoin. But there are several others. I mean, kind of the little brother to Bitcoin, Ethereum, just launched their ETF last week. So a large asset in that too, which is proof of stake. It doesn't require all this energy intensive stuff. It doesn't require all this special legislation and people trying to ramrod legislation that gives carve outs and creates infrastructure that could disappear or could be produced in China and have implications there. So what I'm trying to say is this is a vast landscape that is going to be daunting for us all to understand. I'm here to help as much as I can, but I'm even at a loss in trying to to get that out. So yeah, all that to say, I wholeheartedly agree, and we've got quite a task in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just quickly, for such a time as this, I'm glad we're doing this because we have a national election coming up, and that could have radical implications one way or the other for cryptocurrencies and how the federal government sees it. So I think the work we do in this group will be very important one way or the other, whichever direction that goes. So I'm glad to be a part.
Any other comments? Questions? Yes, sir. Excellent point. I think that's one of the reasons you're here. Okay. Any other comments?
Conclude with this. Consumers and investors, they trust our financial systems. Despite the trillions of dollars of debt and the massive inflation right now, we still have the healthiest economy in the world. And so I know we're discussing this with the lens toward that. We still have the healthiest economy in the world, and that is because of a regulatory framework that is not overbearing most of the time, but regulation is good for business. So it's not like the Securities Commission official position is not to overregulate any industry. Guys, I'm a capitalist. We've seen, from past, and we've learned from these things. The Securities Exchange Act came up as a result of the stock market crash. 2008, I agree, Helena, the response here, and even the systemic bank issues, in 2023, there were massive hearings. And what we've experienced is a crypto industry that has imploded, and they're very much so connected. FTX was so interconnected, and there's not a decentralized, feature that prevents failure. And that's what we've witnessed in this last few years with the crypto industry. And I'm not saying peer-to-peer, but those are the things that we don't need to forget about either going forward. Thank you.
What I'd like to do now, if I might, is for y'all to consider, for this body to consider, is how do we approach it at this point? What do we do? It's been suggested that we look at dividing particular topics into smaller groups to meet and to come up with some things. What's y'all's thoughts along that? Would that be effective? Would that be appropriate? And if so, what kind of groups you want to be in? We've got the energy, we've got the FCPA that we've talked about, we've got the banking and the IT folks, and which of these groups should be combined together to try to identify? I mean, I don't want to get us into a small circles, small enough that we're just going to hear each other in the drum. I want us to be able to exchange of ideas. So I'm open along that line. Representative Shaw?
I think one good thing would be to have a comprehensive review. I was on the Ethics and Finance Committee, and we had a lot of review of what other states are doing. So I think that would be a good function, is to see what other states, even what other countries maybe, or how they're regulating, or what they're doing, because it's affecting everybody. So I think that would be a good question to ask for either a group or a subgroup or whatever, subcommittee, or however you wanted to approach that.
A good idea. Keep in mind, we have February to have this ready. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Scott Latham, Alabama Bankers. When you guys are talking about consensual regulation or regulation by consensus, I think is the term you used. I was trying to follow you. I don't understand that. And again, we're a very heavily regulated industry. I asked Rosemary, do most of your small businesses understand this? They don't. That doesn't mean that we won't gain a better understanding of it. I won't poll this room, but I would hasten to say that a lot of people don't understand consensual regulation. Before I get comfortable with anything that impacts our industry, I want to first understand what that consensual regulation is, how that works. Because I can tell you, as the superintendent said, and as Helena said, our bankers every single day, right now, it's probably what, 2:30, 2:15 in the afternoon, before those doors close at 4 o'clock, there will be hundreds of thousands of dollars reported in fraud in this state today. Some of that postal service, some of that just internet. I mean, direct, indirect, all sorts of things. But a lot of it has to do with what appears to be behind the black curtain. We don't understand it. That doesn't mean we won't understand it. That doesn't mean we won't get there. And one day look back and say, oh, wow, we're not playing the 33s or the 45s anymore. But I can tell you, a lot of people aren't going to understand it at all.
Yeah, and I
want to understand consensual regulation. I want to get my arms around that, because when I tell you, I stand up and say, and probably people in other industries laugh, we are one of the most highly regulated industries there are. We'll be in Washington 3 or 4 times a year. I was with Congressman Dale Strong yesterday and had 18 bankers. And I said, I don't think you understand how many compliance officers the smallest banks in the state have to have. And I'm certain from our credit union, because there are similar constraints there. There are a lot of concerns about what this is. And so I think educating, helping us to understand what this consensual regulation is, comparing that to what we're already seeing is tremendous fraud that is tied to it. I've spoken a little bit with our folks who study this every day, the American Bankers Association. There is significant concern about the impact of it.
So,
I want to better understand.
So why don't we take the bankers here, okay, and the IT folks, and put at least you 4 folks into a group to knock heads and to try to figure out how this can be, so you can get a better understanding of both sides, because you got the centralized and the decentralized, and the self and the overly, and try to, would that be a place to start?
Yeah, and I wanted to apologize for almost interrupting you. I was so excited to hear you say, hey, I want to learn, because that's what Alabama Blockchain Alliance, that's why we're a ragtag group of volunteers now, but that's our mission, is to help people kind of understand this, somewhat complicated, at the, in the details thing, but broad level, it's a technology for coordination, and we're happy to help. So
and I would say one thing that's missing in that is there's a lot of parallels with how blockchain works and traditional, ACH, now FedNow RTP, and some of these other things coming out. The people, whenever I've done training or presentations on it, the people who get it right away are forensic accountants. The people who next get it are accountants, because it's just a big spreadsheet in the sky. And once they see that, they're like, oh, okay. But so that'd be a great conversation, especially if there was some training that was geared towards traditional existing financial institutions, to draw specifically those parallels. Hey, you understand this? This is how that works over there.
I think too that we also have to understand, you're probably well aware, our banking infrastructure is built on COBOL mainframes, which that's 1959 technology. The average age of
Hey,
a
hey, what's
COBOL
wrong with that?
developer, the average age of a COBOL developer is 52. I mean, we do not have a new crop of developers to maintain the mainframes that underpin our financial system. And that's a real threat. And that's a thing that, so, you know, can we find a better answer? Does blockchain offer that answer? I mean, I think it does. And I think that it's worth looking into because we've got a technology crisis coming up in the banking industry really soon that we've got to figure out how to fix.
So if I might, as a proposal, the first subcommittee, if that's not a dirty word, Mike Shaw, Wade Preston, let's see, Andre Scott, and then Scott Latham, Greg McClellan. How about you five forming up as dealing with regulatory information? Is that be all right? Is there anyone else that feels left out from that?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see the credit union, the association side on that committee as well. So we have the regulatory side and then.
Oh. Is that a yes or a no? Okay. We'll include, certainly. Yes, sir, go ahead. Oh, certainly. Exactly. All right.
We got plenty of time.
That's right. That is 2026, not 25. That's right. Okay. Plenty of time then.
Election year would be great.
Smart, Elliot.
So, Mr. Chairman,
What I would like to do, first off, is I'd like to get a letter from that organization with a request that you be named or whatever, and we'll add that to it at the appropriate time. We'll take it from. That be all right? Okay. That way we'll have a paper trail. That be all right?
yeah, we will do that. Because
Okay.
it did say association versus administration. I think there was just a conflation of terms, but we'll make sure that's done. And unless somebody opposes, maybe since you put together the first group, we could discuss the other groups and just email and let folks know where we think they might fit in best, and then leave it to you guys to subcommittee and get together during a 3-month
I think
period.
that'd be, unless there's anything, is there any other group that's the most contentious or difficult that we need to deal with here?
Put them together. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Unless anybody has an opinion about that, but we could just look at the appointments and kind of group people together based on expertise and backgrounds.
Well, let's ask Clay. Clay, you've got this FCPA issue. Is that a separate issue you need to deal with others, or with what group? Do you need to be put in with this regulatory group in some way or not? You don't think you need to be separated out by another study group? All right, so let's go ahead and put Helms on that too, because much of what you're going to be needing is tracking data, which is going to be dealing with the regulation and the diversification matters, right? Okay, is that okay with y'all?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there, Sean, what's the Attorney General's interest here?
I think it's to protect the public. I mean, to protect the consumers, much like what the Securities Commission does on a. But you know, we overlap somewhat, but they're much more, you know, knowledgeable about securities than we are. But I think, you know, I think the Attorney General's office is you know, tasked with protecting the public, and then too, I think more than anything is, you know, level playing field amongst the industries. I don't know if there is that right now because this is an emerging technology, but I think that's we share a lot of the enforcement concerns that the Securities Commission does, though, to sum it up.
Then I think what you just said, protecting the public, is one of the key issues the state has. So let's make that the second sub, all right? And my initial thoughts on that, of course, would be Mr. Urquhart from the governor's office, okay? Senator Singleton. Senator Singleton, you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
You okay with being on that particular subcommittee?
Wherever you put me, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to serve.
I'm going to hold you to that on several things.
We just talked about one sum here now.
Mr. Sibley, of course, Amanda. Is there anyone else I'm leaving off that need to be on the protecting the public? The energy folks want to be on that? Okay. Ms. Hardwick? Say again? Ah, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
I thought y'all would be protecting, never mind.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Alabama Association for Justice might like to be included there as well.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Man, we're going to get all these lawyers in there.
We'll get it right that way.
Just a second. Don't get me too far behind here, guys. So I've got Chris Coley, Ms. Hardwick, Amanda Seen, Sibley, Singleton, Urquhart on the public service, public protection. Anybody else? Did I leave anybody else off?
I just wanted to ask, is that the public protection, are we also giving an eye towards protecting the rights of the public as well? The freedom to transact and...
I think that should be a part of it,
Okay,
yes.
I just want to speak that into existence because a lot of times we hear a lot of, we got to protect the consumers, but at the cost of the rights of the consumers.
Certainly, yeah. All right, anyone else? All right, now that leaves a few others. Let's see here. Taylor, what's finance going to be doing in this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you did have a discussion about applications in the public sector.
Yeah.
I think that would be very appropriate for finance to participate in,
Public sector?
as well as OIT.
Are you speaking of the uses in the
Correct.
public sector? Okay.
So is there any way we can combine the business industry with you guys? We have a couple here representing our business community in the state. They may be desire to be on a committee of two, but there's a way to combine blockchain technology, possibly not just for public, but, business use. They may have an interest.
Do you have an
in that.
objection to that?
No objection.
So how would we phrase that? Public and private uses then?
Yeah. Applications of the technology.
Applications, okay. With that seems to cover most everybody else. Is that, how many would that be? That would be Representative Daniels, we'll put him there. Ms. Allred? She'd be happy to serve? Okay, we'll put her there. And if Taylor, Nichols, Chad, Mason? There you go. You all right with that? Yes, sir. Okay. Oh, and I did not put Mr. King. You're on the previous one, aren't you, Mr. King?
Yes, Mr.
I knew I
Chairman,
missed
if that's
somebody on
okay.
that one. You're on the protect the public. Okay, gotcha. Ms. Duncan, you're going to be on the public and private use? Okay. Rosemary? And that's everybody. So we have 3 subs. Is there any question of what the assignments are and who's on it? None? Okay. I'm going to leave it to you guys. Now I'm going to ask only because us part-timers are always in charge, right? On the first one, Representative Shaw, that puts you to set the times and pull people together, okay? Senator Singleton, you got the protect the public one to pull that together. Who's the, and that would be Representative Daniels dealing with the public and private sectors, okay? So I'll
Representative Daniels wanted me to let you know that he's streaming in on the other line, so therefore he didn't get the link to come in, but he's willing to serve.
Wonderful. I'm glad. That way I won't have to make it a complete total order. But yes, thank you for that, Senator. I appreciate you letting us know.
Okay.
I would encourage everybody then to start working and figuring out an agenda of your own and a time frame on that. Now, the next question I have is, when does this body need to come back together as a whole to start seeing where the subs have become? 30 days is too soon. 90 days is too far. Where should we go with that? That's my thoughts. Anybody argue with that? No?
Yeah, well, I thought maybe, yeah.
Say again?
December gets hectic. I know there's mid-November or the second week of January, maybe before session.
You don't think we ought to gather maybe before Thanksgiving, a week before Thanksgiving or something in mid-November?
Mid-November, or after the election, we may all be changing our minds anyway, so.
Or maybe it'll give us further direction. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to give the subs enough time to do some type of work? All right. Who's got a calendar? November 15th? What day is that? Anybody got a clue? Friday? Perfect day, right? Let's make it November 14th. All right? Time and place to be determined, but let's pencil that in for November 14th for this body to come back together as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, well done. You were clearly the right person for this job.
Blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
With that, what else do we need to discuss? Anybody else got any frayed remarks, suggestions, complaints, confessions? In that case, I would move that we adjourn until November 14th. Any objections? All in favor? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you for your patience and time.